Welcome to Who Are You, a CSI podcast. I'm Raven, and I've seen CSI through and through around 3 to 4 times.
And I'm Nick. These are my first time experiencing these episodes.
And today we are reviewing Season 4, Episode 12, Butterflied. Original air date January 15th, 2004. Director Richard J. Lewis. Writers Anthony E. Zeiger and David Rambo. I don't know if we've ever had David Rambo before.
No.
I was like, when I saying his name, I was like, this doesn't sound like somebody I know. So we start this episode with overhead shots of the Vegas Strip. So, Nick, what is our Vegas score for today's episode?
Our Vegas score is only 21. There's only a couple scenes.
Yeah,
I think they're both front loaded.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of sort of initial scenes, and then like the back half of the episode, there's not a single scene.
Yeah. I was going to say, this is a very character heavy episode, not a Vegas heavy episode. So we leave Vegas, as we do for most of the episode. We go to Grissom at what we learn is a crime scene, but like should suspect from the beginning is a crime scene because he has the little booties on, the little I don't want to like leave trace from my shoes on the ground booties on. And as he's going through this house, you can kind of tell. Again, this is like confirmed later, but it's pretty obvious, I think. I have to say this because it's like I've seen this episode so many times that I'm like, is it obvious, or is it obvious because I've seen this episode so many times? But it looks like the house is ready for a date. Like there's like wine and candles and there's like mood setting stuff all around the house as he's going through the house.
It was not obvious.
Okay. See, that's
in part because I couldn't tell what the heck the candles were. I like went back and rewatched.
Oh, and you didn't know they were candles?
There was this weird red thing on the floor. I had no idea.
Okay.
Like, it wasn't obvious. And then when they like showed you later, I was like, oh, those were candles.
You're like, got it.
Here's my one thing I want to say with the scene.
Okay.
Grissom is like staying on the outside, walking along.
Yep.
And very early on in an episode, we had the Buffalo episode.
Yes.
Was like
that first season? First season, second season?
Yeah. First season. Two people do it. I'm going to bet right now. This is the same house. It was like triggering me, like vision memories.
Wonder. I did.
It's
I didn't get that
the
vibe.
Same floor plan. It just must be one of those, Hollywood set homes that they just repaint, reset, whatever. And it was like the hallway and like the rooms, and I was like, that was the upstairs. That hall is the upstairs of the Buffalo house, and it was just like. And I was like, either it's like just so close cookie cutter floor plan wise, or it's actually the same thing. They've just reset it. I've learned to like recognize a handful of houses. There's like a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan. Her house, like the house her mom had growing up, just shows up in TV shows randomly every now and then.
That house?
it's like I've seen this house 100 times. I know what house this is.
All right. Well, I'll do some research and I'll see. If I can uncover that, because I didn't get that vibe. Maybe because I was too focused on other components.
I feel like I only got there because he was walking on the edge. I was like, oh, what was that thing in the episode? And then like the neurons started to fire and like draw the lines. I was like, wait, is this the same house? And then on rewatch, I had the exact same feeling, and I was like, this gotta be.
All right, well, we'll do some research and we'll find out.
I did not go back and rewatch the Buffalo episode though.
That's entirely fair. So he's going through this house. He gets to the bathroom, and this is where we see the victim with a butterfly tattoo, and she is like.
Is it bad to refer to that style of tattoo by its cringy 2000s name?
The tramp stamp?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's got to be canceled as a term, right?
I would hope so. But definitely at that time, that's what it would have been.
That was a very popular tattoo circa early 2000s.
Yeah.
Or tattoo location.
So she has this tattoo. She's, again, I'm going to say obviously, but it's like I've seen this episode so many times. To me, I could tell she was posed.
Yeah.
That's not a natural way you would fall.
It felt posed, I think. I had that initial idea.
Okay, so she's posed in this like gorgeous, this expansive walk-in shower, and she's posed on the floor with her face towards like the door. So if you're like walking in, you would like immediately see this victim facing you. And as Grissom is looking at the face, it looks almost exactly like Sarah.
Yeah.
To the point that Nick thought it was the same
actress
for a good part of this episode, and then was like, oh, it is not. It is a different person. So that's how much she looks like Sarah.
Yeah, should we? I guess if we're going to talk about this, I'll say that I spent half the episode thinking it was Sarah was playing both parts.
Yes.
And then later on, you can see their face, and I recognize the actress. So maybe we should do the spot the guest star now.
We can do it now. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's the first time we're seeing it. But I did not spot this guest star until much later in the episode when you see their face for quite a bit longer. But this is an actress that I just wrote down as Victim.
Debbie Marlin. Debbie Marlin is the character name.
Yep. Played by Erin Hayes is the actress, who plays Ted's wife in the new Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure movie.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that movie.
And I've seen that movie like 3 times. I actually kind of like it. Well, I watched it, and then I watched it again. I watched it by myself, and then I watched it with the people I live with.
Yeah.
And then I watched it some other random day. I think I watched half the movie. I just had nothing else to watch. But yeah, I was like, it's very bizarre because when I went to look to figure out who this person was in their IMDb picture, they're blonde, and they're not blonde in this. They're not blonde in Bill and Ted's at all.
Yeah, so you were like, wait a second.
Notably, I think they're in a lot of episodes of some TV show too that I've never watched.
She has a fairly expansive IMDb list.
Oh, Kevin Can Wait, which is it's basically like Kevin James from King of Queens and other movies, basically made another family sitcom movie after King of Queens was canceled, and she plays his wife. Okay. in that, and so I also think maybe a number of commercials from the mid 2010s time frame. But yeah, no, I was like, why do I know this person? It's oh yeah, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
You're like, that's how I know her.
Or what? I don't remember what the movie, the remake is called, but Ted's wife was the mom. It's in that movie. Initially, a lot of the movie revolves around their kids and their family, instead of just them. So
that makes sense.
They have a pretty big part.
So Grissom then steps outside to the team minus Nick. Nick is not in this episode, but otherwise he's at a conference. Grissom steps outside to the team and Jim Brass, and before he kind of starts, talking a little bit about the scene, he just is staring at Sarah.
Yeah.
And then Jim Brass thinks he's maybe looking at him because Jim Brass is standing right behind Sarah. So Jim Brass is like, hey, what's the deal here? And he's like, no one but CSI. Enter the house. We go to credits. We're still outside with the team. Grissom is giving out assignments. Warwick is to check out the cars. Sarah is to do the perimeter, and Catherine is going to be inside with Grissom. Before that, though, Jim Brass and Catherine are talking, and Catherine points out a very talkative neighbor. She's like, maybe we should talk to that guy. He seems to have something to say. Catherine talks to the friend, though, that discovered the victim, learns that they were both nurses, and that the victim, Debbie, was dating a Michael Clark, and this Michael Clark was maybe somebody special. It was the first guy that Debbie had blown her off for, so maybe there was something there. But I do want to point out, and I'll bring this up later in the episode, they've only been dating for a month.
Yeah.
Uno month. And I'm going to bring this up. They've been dating a month. And this friend is explaining that neither were at the hospital today, so she thought that they were just playing hooky together and having a good day. But then when her friend wasn't answering her calls, she stopped by the house, discovered her.
Yeah, she probably called her friend to get the deets.
Yeah, what are the deets?
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's but that's very believable too for new romances. People do irresponsible things.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Spend the day together.
Especially, I shouldn't at least in my case, with ADHD, I also get the intense dopamine from a new dating thing. And so I'm just yes, give me all of this.
And I want it now. I don't want to wait to Saturday or the next day that
I want it now.
Yeah. And that's the kind of job where you guys could easily not have a shared same day off for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. So so totally fair. We then have Jim Brass talking to the wannabe captain of the neighborhood watch. And he is explaining, I don't think he sees this as being derogatory, but he's talking about how her house was essentially the Dr. Otto Mall. There was just doctors in and out of there.
I think we're supposed to think he's a little skeevy.
Yeah, he's definitely a little skeevy. And he does mention, though, that there was a black Mercedes there a few days ago. And this black Mercedes has been coming in at all hours of the night, so he thinks it's a booty call. So Jim Brass is going to want to try to find this Mercedes. Warwick is checking out the car. Sarah approaches, and Warwick is pointing out that there's groceries in the car. So it seems like she was like mid bringing in groceries when this occurred. We go back inside. Grissom is staring at the victim. Catherine walks into the bathroom. I did find this odd. Grissom's like, oh, what am I smelling? And Catherine's like, oh, a cleanser, maybe bleach. You're telling me that Grissom doesn't know what bleach smells like?
Yeah, or Catherine. Like, they would both recognize this smell.
What?
Just not even from being CSI. Like, most humans would recognize bleach, but they probably encounter this several times a year.
All the time. Yeah. So I just thought that was such a weird. Look, it's a throwaway line. It doesn't really matter, but I did find it strange.
There's a line with Catherine. She's trying to explain away the situation, but I could not get over this notion that there were like some groceries inside of the house unpacked, some groceries sitting in the car, and the victim like stopped to go around the house and light candles while packing the groceries. She's like, oh, she got multitasking, distracted. I'm going on a date. I was like, you have ADHD. I have similar tendencies. Stuff like this happens all the time, but like, you don't put like leave refrigerated groceries in the car, and then you would light like 3 candles and be like, oh crap, my groceries, and run back to the car.
But I am also the type, I refuse to do more than one trip for groceries.
Oh yes.
So I don't care how I'm making it happen. All those groceries are coming in at one trip. I'm not going back.
My favorite thing is bringing something like having too much stuff going halfway from the car to the house and back to the car. So like you go from the car to the stairs, and then you go from the stairs to the living room, and then you go from the living room to the other parts of the house.
Yeah.
So like you're never like out of eye shot of the whole.
Of the whole
like your own bucket brigade.
Yeah. So we learn in the scene that they suspect that she was standing when she was attacked. Like she was in the shower lighting these candles. Someone came up behind her, slashed her throat. And this is where Grissom is like, I'm fairly certain that she was placed in this position. Like, this was not the natural position that she fell after being attacked. They don't know why yet, though. We will 100% come back around to this. We come back around, though, to the groceries. When Warwick and Sarah are checking out the fridge, they're looking over the groceries inside of it. They use the date of the milk to make a calculation as to when she went shopping.
It's quite the assumption.
I agree entirely. We return to Grissom and Catherine. They're continuing to process the bathroom, and we learn that all the drains in this bathroom test positive for blood and bleach. So shower, tub, sinks. Like, why is every single drain positive for blood and bleach? But they realize, well, the answer must be in the drains. So then Sarah is underneath the house. She is, opening up the pipe, collecting some fluid from it, and then also taking like a section of the pipe from underneath the house.
It's like a very weird thing that does not register to people who live in New England like us. That you have this like exposed pea trap under your house.
Under your house, you can just crawl underneath your house.
Are all these drains going to this one little with these massive cast iron drains in our houses?
Yeah.
I don't know what that's about.
No, we're not used to that at all. And we go back to Grissom and Catherine, and we're learning that the killer cleaned everywhere but the shower. But they're also like realizing how much blood was cleaned up, and they're like, where is all this blood coming from? Like we have the one victim, we essentially have her blood accounted for. Where is all this other blood?
Yeah, like she's like had her neck sliced, but it's not like she's been hung up and bled out like an animal.
Right. So then we have Jim Brass talking to a doctor at a hospital, and it's like confirmed that Michael Clark was a no-show because he was supposed to like be on this doctor's rotation. And this doctor like only has nice things to say about him. Like he has a steady hand, he's gifted, and he really hopes that he's not involved in anything that happened to Debbie.
This Dr. Vincent Lurie is my second and final spot the guest star.
All right, let's
go. This is Kyle Sekhor, who I swear to God, I know this guy from 30 Things.
Okay.
But I went through his IMDb. He looks so familiar. His voice is so familiar. There's one thing I definitely know him from, and it's the Flash TV show. He's in like 3 episodes. He plays one of the major characters, like father, who then turns out to be an evil villain, and then they kill him or whatever. It's like he's in like 3 episode arc, and then he's gone for forever. But like
he's in City Slickers. So I watched City Slickers all the time as a kid. I must have seen him in City Slickers.
And he's in a bunch of things, like an episode of this, an episode of that. And I was like, maybe he's an episode of White Collar. I've watched White Collar.
Okay, yeah.
He's an episode of Boston Legal. He's an episode of like a bunch of different things. So maybe, I think he just has such an iconic tone to his voice.
Yes.
It stands out, but really it's like, I think it's because he was in 3 episodes of The Flash. And I as I've mentioned before, sometimes like old TV shows I used to watch, I get hooked on the shorts cycle for clips from those shows. And so I wonder if maybe not that long ago I saw,
a
clip
and
it became extra.
Yeah.
Extra ingrained in my mind. He just felt so familiar. He's in 11 episodes of Veronica Mars. Never seen that show.
I've seen an episode here. I've seen an episode here and there, but definitely not enough to feel confident that I know him.
If you're a Veronica Mars fan, you're probably screaming at us right now.
Like, how dare you not know who this is?
Yeah, that's a pretty big show. Never seen it. Yeah.
So we're back in the kitchen. Warwick and Catherine are there. There are no cleaning supplies. Absolutely none. So they're theorizing that the killer must have used all of them, but then also had to have disposed of them because there's no like remnants of the cleanup anywhere in the house. So this brings Warwick, Catherine, and Grissom outside. They're walking around to barrels. And of course, Grissom, the bug guy, focuses in on the one barrel that has like flies buzzing around it. He opens it up. Look at that. There's like bleach and a bloody rag and body parts.
Yeah, like plastic bags full of bodily fluids and flesh.
So we flash forward to the morning. Catherine, Warwick, and Grissom are going through the barrels. Catherine can confirm the victim is a male. She holds up a bag and is like, I can confirm that this victim is a male victim. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. Hopefully you've watched this episode, but like there are like a dozen uniformed cops and they're like pulling body parts out of everyone's trash barrel on the street.
Yes.
Like there's like a lot of stuff.
Yes. It's a
spread.
whole. Yeah.
I think it's like, this is probably one of the biggest, like what, you didn't put it in the trash barrel outside the house, but then you like couldn't drive 3 blocks over. I don't know. I guess at some point you maybe expected people to find it. Like, I don't know, whose trash day was tomorrow? Like,
right.
That's where you needed to go.
That's what you needed to know. And so they're, pulling out different body parts, like all bagged up. And we also learn in this scene that the killer vacuumed.
Oh, yes.
So not only did they use like cleanser and things like that, but they also vacuumed the scene. We then have Sarah. She's in the lab. She's processing the fluid from the pipes and kind of examining the pipes. Greg Sanders enters. They're talking about the multiple hairs in the pipes. And then come to find out, Sarah finds like one hair that might have been missed by the bleach. And it has a skin tag on it. So Greg Sanders has something to do this episode.
Other than make a really crude Nurses Gone Wild.
Yes. Comment. Yeah. I feel like we were like starting to move away from that version of Greg. Like we haven't seen that version of Greg Sanders in a while. And then it was like, oh.
I don't want to blame Mr. Rambo, but
Mr. Rambo, we're gonna hold this. We're gonna pin this one on you, my friend.
Mr. Rambo is 86 episodes of CSI under his belt.
Oh, okay.
So it said starting 2006, so I think maybe this season, and so can't really blame him for the old stuff. But well, I guess we'll find out.
We then have Catherine with Doc Robbins, and we already knew this, but the victim had her throat slash. She died from exsanguination, and they're theorizing that a scalpel was what was used to do this.
Yeah, a short blade is basically all they know.
Yeah, and then Doc Robbins is estimating that it would be 12 hours minimum to cut up the male victim. Like, because it was done with like such precision and such care that essentially, like, this was not a like, I hacked this person into pieces and put them in bags and threw them away. This was like a calculated, very long period of time that this was done.
Based on his fishing.
Based on his fishing experience alone. Yeah. Catherine is thinking that this butcher is a doctor. We'll go down that path further later on. We have Grissom looking at a butterfly figurine, and as he's doing so, he's standing in front of a mirror, and behind them, and then reflecting in the mirror is the bed. And so we see the victim on the bed. She turns to look like as if she's looking at Grissom, and then she morphs into like it is Sarah, but it's not like a super clear image of Sarah, but she like morphs into an image of Sarah.
this is the actual scene where
you realized
I realized who the actress was who was playing the victim, and it wasn't Sarah the whole time.
Yeah, it was not Sarah the whole time. No, it was not. So Grissom gets a call from Sarah, though, and he is flustered. He is claiming that he's in like a bad area and he doesn't have good reception and he can't hear her and he doesn't want her to come to the scene and just all, being very cagey and being very flustered. We then have Sarah walking into Warwick. He is processing the car, the Mercedes, and they opt to super glue it for prints. They also find a piece of a black trash bag in there. So they think that the killer covered the seat with the black trash bag, but then in moving the seat back, like snagged a little piece. And Warwick gets in. And I don't think that this would be admissible in court. Like, I think you'd have to like do some fun math or use a dummy. But he's just like, there's no way that it was the 5'9" victim driving this car last because I'm 6'2" and I have plenty of space. So they're like, okay, it must have been somebody taller driving the Mercedes here.
I will say I'm a good 6 or 7 inches taller than my partner, and we dropped our roommate's car off at the mechanic the other day.
Mm-hmm.
She drove the roommate's car, I drove my car, and then we went to pick it up. She drove her car over, so then I drove the roommate's car home, and I did not need to move the seat 1 inch. It was exactly the same. And I was like, maybe it's actually not so weird that if you're like 4 inches, 5'9" to 6'2" is not that far big of a difference.
No.
I was like, that people can share the same, seat preferential. And so, yeah, I think that this would warrant a little bit more rigor before you do. Like, I would not want to put this in front of a jury as a key piece of evidence.
No, same. We then have Catherine Warwick and Sarah discussing the case. Grissom is on speaker because he is still on scene. Greg Sanders enters the room, and this is where we learn that via hair and print confirmation that the male victim is Michael Clark. And so then as they're continuing to talk about the case, they're like, okay, well, Debbie was killed first. And now they're like, oh, that's why she was posed, and why she was posed in the way that she was that her face was the first thing that Michael would see, like coming into the house and like coming in to find her would be her like facing him. And so this leads them to believe that Michael, in fact, was the real focus of rage here, and it wasn't Debbie.
At some point later this episode, this like monologue falls apart. No, they imply that like maybe it's like in the reenactment, they like imply that like, oh, Michael just showed up. You know what I mean? Like they didn't, like there's another part of the episode where he's like, hey, it's me, Michael, in like a reenactment. And it's like, and Michael showed up and he had to take care of him or something.
No, he was supposed to come over. She was preparing for a date. That's why there was wine. That's why she was lighting candles, was because she was preparing for Michael to come over for the date. I think he said that because he probably knocked on the door. She didn't answer. And then he was like, oh, okay. Like, if I'm 4 weeks into dating somebody and I'm supposed to go to their house and I knock on the door and they don't come to the door, I'm not going to just like walk in unannounced, right? I'm going to be like, hey, like I'm here, like, like what's up?
Maybe it was just like unexpected is the idea. It was like you didn't know it was happening at that moment.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, that could be possible for sure. So we then have Grissom. He's still at the crime scene. He's like checking the carpet for blood, I assume. Catherine enters and she's like, have you gone home? And he's like, nope. And she's like, And she's like, have you eaten? And he's like, oh, did you bring anything? And I was like, she is not your mother, Grissom.
Yes.
Catherine is not your mom.
Very unprofessionally, they eat the victim's food. I know Catherine's like, oh, we're going to have to replace it. But like, how about no?
Yeah, order something. She's like, I'll go check the fridge. I know, like, order some food. But we'll get back around to that. We have work going through the contents of the vacuum bag. Sarah enters. There are white fibers from the spare bedroom in the vacuum bag. And they're like, they hadn't been considering the spare bedroom as like any part of this. So now they're like, do we need to take a look at the spare bedroom? Like, why would he have vacuumed in there? Like, we didn't think that was a part of the crime scene.
I totally understand what they're saying in this episode.
Yeah.
But I swear to God, every carpet in the house is white when they show
it.
They're like in the bedroom and like the next scene.
Yeah.
And like, it's like that carpet is not green. I don't know if it's supposed to be like a light green or something.
Yeah, I don't know. And he also, in the vacuum contents, finds a butterfly pendant, like a little like piece of a jewelry that has a butterfly on it. We go to Grissom eating food from the victim's fridge. Catherine sits down to join him. She's telling him he needs to go home. Like, he needs fresh eyes. He needs to go get some rest. Instead, he's like, let's like talk through what we know. So they talk through what they know about the case thus far. We then have Grissom and Catherine in the bedroom, and they're checking the sheets, but she just put fresh new sheets on the bed, so they're not finding anything in the sheets. But Grissom does find silk restraints. And from this, Catherine points out, some guys, need a little leverage. So she is going to print the end board.
Footrest. It's not a headboard. Footboard.
That's why I said end. That's why I said end board, because I was headboard is that side, feet board. I don't know. And as they're talking about this, Work calls, and he's explaining to Grissom about the butterfly link in the vacuum bag as well as the white fibers. So Grissom goes into the spare bedroom. This is, again, maybe I'm just jaded from all my dating mishaps. They've been dating for a month, 4 weeks. She already has framed pictures of them together. They're on really her shelving unit in the spare bedroom. I feel like that's a bit much for a month into dating somebody.
Yeah, I think
like,
maybe.
It's fine if you have pictures together, like you took selfies together, whatever, great, wonderful. But to like print them out, get a frame, put them in a frame, display them in your house, that's a lot.
If it was a gift, like.
Maybe, but that's a lot too.
Could have been the day after Valentine's Day. We don't know.
I don't know. I
think they needed the timeline to be short so that they could insinuate other people were there.
Yeah.
With her.
Yeah.
Like in the past, and without it being like, oh, these guys have been together for 6 months, and be like, well, then why? Why would there be someone else's evidence in here?
Yeah. As he continues going through the shelf, he finds a collection of butterfly bracelets, but within this collection, there's one lonely little link, like one little sad link away from the rest of its chain. Catherine walks in.
I don't even know how they can tell that this is a necklace
or a bracelet.
It could be like a charm, if you know what I mean.
I think it's like how, I don't know, as someone who wears bracelets and such, I feel like I could probably tell the difference. But
I mean, that'd be fair. Right? Yeah, I don't have a lot of hands-on experience.
That's fair. Catherine walks in. She had lifted a toe print, and they're talking about, she has this like collection of butterfly bracelets, and so they're like, did the killer take a gift back? Because there's like only, there's this one that's like looked like it's been ripped, and maybe this is where the killer made a mistake. And as they're talking, Grissom finds a hair on the shelf. So we then go to Sarah. She is taking toe prints of Debbie to compare to the toe print that Catherine took from the footboard. And when she's done doing this, or during the process of doing this, she's sitting on like a wheeled chair or stool. And so she wheels up to the face of the victim and is just staring at her, with the understanding that like this woman looks a lot like her. So Catherine's in the locker room. Sarah walks up to her, says that she took the toe prints and she compared them. And she's asking about Grissom, Sarah is. And Catherine's like, yeah, he's still on scene. And then Catherine's like, have you seen the victim? And she's like, oh yeah, like I took the toe prints. And she's like, oh, if I didn't know better, I would think that was you up on that table. And Sarah pointedly lies and says, oh, I didn't really look at her face. I was just, getting the toe prints. Sarah, you lie.
I know. I feel like you probably see people who look like other people all the time. I feel like the audience, like, I don't know. They both make a big deal out of this and then don't make a big deal out of this the whole episode. It's so weird.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we'll talk about it closer to the end. I will say that I don't.
They're really trying to pay off the ending.
Yes.
You know what I mean with this?
Yeah.
But it's also kind of like, is it either make it a big deal or don't make it a big deal? You know what I mean? Like they kind of like ignore it and then like allude to it, and then they like we'll have like one conversation like this, and then like nothing will happen for time
until we wrap it all up at the end. But before,
this is also the first time I would say they even address it. Like until now, it's
all been alluded to up until this point. Yes. Yeah. This is the first time a character says definitively, wow, this victim looks a lot like you, Sarah. Yes. So then we have Catherine and Jim Brass back at the hospital. They're taking toe prints from a group of doctors. Jackie is on hand.
Voluntarily.
Immediately toe print. Jackie's like, I don't need to be in the lab to do this. I can do this on scene. And the toe print we get a match to a Dr. Tripton. So Catherine and Jim Brass are then with Dr. Tripton in interrogation, and he's claiming that Debbie came on to him. What do you want him to say? And he does admit to giving her a bracelet, but he points out one of the fully still intact bracelets. Yeah. He's like, oh, I think I gave her that one. And so then we have Grissom and Greg Sanders with the hair that they found on the scene, and Greg Sanders is talking about how the person whose hair this is, uses Rogaine. So then there's like a Rogaine and Propecia together conversation, and references to Papa Olaf, and I
love the Papa Olaf stories.
Okay, good. Papa Olaf comes up quite a bit in seasons upon seasons of CSI. So
Olaf.
I was like, this is like one of the earliest call-outs, I think, of Papa Olaf. Papa Olaf is like a pretty often referenced character in CSI.
We've had him referenced before.
Yes, we have.
Yeah. Also, they're name dropping, Propecia, Rogaine, and they're just alluding to Viagra this whole episode.
Yes. Just alluding to it. We then have a Grissom and Catherine. They're meeting in the hallway, and Catherine's like, look, Dr. Tripton is like a balloon head and cheating on his wife, but doesn't think that he's the killer. Like that, she's not leaning towards that. And he's also not going gray or losing his hair or any of these things that Grissom is kind of inquiring about.
I often will call out where I'm like, I feel like they just they love to be like, oh, we found a piece of evidence and totally indicts this person, but because they're not actually the killer, we're just gonna believe them and move on with our lives real quickly. But to be fair, I have to give this episode some kudos. They spent most of the episode chasing a dead guy.
Yes, they did.
Before.
Yeah. They spent most of it chasing a dead guy.
I was kind of I really can't be they don't always give up on the innocent people right away.
Yeah. We have Grissom with Doc Robbins. They're talking about handedness. And this is not going to be admissible in court, but Doc Robbins believes that the killer was left-handed for a variety of
based on the
directionality
cutting,
and yes. So then we have Greg Sanders out in the field. Technically, he's at the hospital. He's scanning doctors' heads, and
with a weird red light.
Yeah, this weird red light, which evidently picks up Propecia, and
they say it later they're it blocks infrared light, so the idea is they're shining an infrared light, and if it's black, it's
and our earlier spot, the guest star, his hair reacted or didn't react, I guess, and
I couldn't really tell.
I couldn't either, but
then they cut. So
but then he's in interrogation with Grissom and Jim Brass, and a
former
lawyer.
Spot the guest star lawyer.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yep. And so they're essentially kind of letting him know that he's a suspect. And I will say I found this weird. Jim Brass shows him the link, the one little lonely butterfly clip. And the doctor admits oh yeah, that looks like the one that I gave Debbie. Why would you? She has a collection of them.
Yep.
Why would you say that?
Also, they didn't show that one to the other guy. They showed him a bunch of bracelets.
Yeah, and he picked a fully formed bracelet. Yeah.
They didn't do that.
Yeah.
But also, don't tell the guy that you have 2 of 8 parts to a bracelet. You should be going to his house with a search warrant right now.
Find the other part of the bracelet.
Okay, he admits it was his. You found it. The part of it's missing. Before this guy leaves this room, somebody should be talking to a judge, getting a search warrant, going to his house. He wasn't in any of the trash barrels you went through because you went through them quite extensively.
Yeah.
So he has the rest of that bracelet somewhere.
Yeah. But the doctor does realize, after also consulting with his lawyer, that they don't really have any solid evidence on him. And also, so
they make a big deal about how being left-handed isn't admissible in court. And it's the biggest piece of evidence they're talking about here.
Of evidence, yes.
Lawyer, pipe up. This isn't admissible in court.
This is not admissible in court. Yeah. Come on, former Spot the Guest Star lawyer. I'm sure you're getting paid well in this episode, so make it count. But Jim Brass is like, oh, do you want to listen to a theory? And the doctor's like, sure, whatever. Yeah, I'll listen to a theory. And Jim Brass's theory is that Debbie rejected him, and thus he took his rage out on Michael Clark and Debbie, and so he's like, okay, awesome, great, have a good day. He gets up to go, and Grissom is like, hold on a second, and goes on a fairly personal
monologue
about comparing himself to the Doctor in a lot of ways, like talking about how they're both middle-aged men, work has consumed their lives, the only time that they actually like touch people is with latex gloves on.
It's sad, isn't it, Doc? Guys like us. A couple of middle-aged men who've allowed their work to consume their lives. The only time we ever touch other people is when we're wearing our latex gloves. We wake up one day and realize that for 50 years we haven't really lived at all.
And then along comes a second chance. This like younger, beautiful woman is offering you this different life, but you'd have to give up everything that you've worked so hard for. And Grissom's like, I couldn't do that. Like, I couldn't give up everything that I worked for, you know, for this other life that was being offered, but you did. And she showed you this wonderful life, and then she took it away, and she started dating Michael. And so essentially this is what drove you to do this, was that she gave you this wonderful life and then she took it away from you. And then Grissom kind of ends it with like, well, you have nothing left, right? Like, what do you have left now? Like, you killed Debbie, you killed Michael Clark, like, what do you have left? And the Doctor, and I know this is also like not admissible, like they wouldn't really be able to use this against him, but like, don't say anything to this, don't respond to anything that Grissom has just said to you, just leave. But instead he's like, well, I'm still here. And then Grissom is like, are you? And he walks out with his lawyer, and Grissom is still in interrogation, and he kind of sighs. And then we pan out a little bit and we realize that Sarah has been watching the entire time. So she heard this whole conversation about how this younger, beautiful woman was offering him another life and he couldn't take it. And end of episode.
I like this scene. I think it's good.
I think it was
it's really the point of the whole episode is to get here.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Everything about this episode is for sure.
Don't like the notion that a second chance is a younger, beautiful woman. There are plenty of women your age, Judes. And I'm being reminded of this really hilarious study graph that I saw on a YouTube video. And if you ask women the ideal age for a man that they want to date, when they're younger, it's a little bit older. And then when they get to be like mid 40s, there's kind of like this crossover point. And like 50-year-old women generally like start reporting like slightly younger men.
Yeah.
If you ask men, it is like a vertical line.
Yeah, they want their girls to be like 21 for like their entire life.
And it's like like they're referring to as like the Leonardo DiCaprio effect.
Oh, so gross. So gross.
But it's like whether that's genetic or not, you still are an intelligent human being, and you should grow up and become an adult and get over your lizard brain a little. And it's like, you can have a life with somebody your age. It doesn't have to be that this 22-year-old, 26-year-old girl showed interest in you and you were like, oh no, I can't, I'm your boss.
Yeah.
You know, how about you just go out and meet somebody?
Yeah, I agree entirely. But I will also say, just as someone who like watched the show when I was like, in high school, and you know, just have an affinity for this show, that yes, like Sarah is younger than Grissom, and so like, you know, that is part of it, I guess. But like, Sarah's not some like 21-year-old party girl, you know, like she's like well established in her career.
I don't know how old her character is supposed to be, but it's so hard to guess, but I would guess she's in her 30s.
And he's saying he's in his 50s. So to me,
she's older than the nurse.
Yes. So to me,
appeared.
Yes.
I don't know
so to me,
how old they actually are.
To me, that like, it's not as skeevy as it could be by any stretch of the imagination. Because she is like a full-on adult, well into her career.
Right.
You know, you know what I mean? So like, yeah, she's younger, but she's not.
Actress Georgia Fox, who plays Sarah.
Yes. And who follows us on Bluesky.
Yep. Was currently 56. So 20 years ago, when this episode was filmed, she was a 36-year-old woman.
Yeah. So that's fine.
So she's playing a 36-year-old woman.
That's fine. That is 100% okay. Like 36-year-old woman and 50-year-old guy, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And William Peterson is only like, I guess he's 13 years older than her, which is older, but not crazy. I mean, my partner's 8 years older than I am, so you know, it's not It's not wildly crazy.
I've had several partners that are 10 years older.
Yeah. Also, I want to note that even though I talked about this graph where like it was pretty close in age, there is definitely propensity for like women to often, whether or not they want or choose to date them, find older men attractive. And then that probably stems from a lot of like thousands of years of evolutionary success by having, an established partner to take care of and raising your children versus not for nothing. Sorry, dudes. When you're 25-year-olds, you are a mess.
You are a hot mess express.
Express. And for some reason, we are just not mentally ready to take care of the children at times we're most likely to have them.
Yeah.
Historically. Nope. And I don't know how much of that is a modern phenomenon and how much of that is antiquated. But, it's not that weird that you just want, a stable human being to take care of your children.
Very, very true.
With you.
Yeah.
So everyone goes both ways, but like,
yeah.
I just wanted to be somewhat fair in the comparison, but like that does not mean you need to be out there.
Okay.
Chasing 20.
But back to this scene specifically.
Yeah.
Because I'm very curious at your take on this. Do you feel like the scene came out of left field? Because I've been very quiet and thank you listeners who commented on Bluesky and were like, wow, Raven, you really didn't drop spoilers for Nick. And I was like, you know how hard it's been the last few episodes where there's been like little hints of Grissom and Sarah stuff, and Nick being like, there's like nothing going on between Grissom and Sarah. And I'm like,
well, my thing is they didn't do a good job actually making there be a Grissom Sarah thing in past episodes. And then this season, they've just pretended like there was a big thing between them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So this whole season, they have been building up to this.
Yeah.
So in that case, it is not a surprise at all.
Okay.
But how we ended up on this, I feel like I missed a season in terms of how we ended up on this track. But they have been following this path quite regularly. And obviously, this whole episode, they've sort of been like building up for it. I don't know that I specifically saw this coming, but it wasn't like out of left field, and I liked it. I think it was like, okay, I get why we're doing this now.
Yeah.
Right, you were building up to this moment.
Yeah,
and then I thought it was a great moment before they panned out and Sarah saw the whole thing.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, okay, now the gloves are off.
Yeah,
now something's going to happen. I'll say, this is good.
Okay,
yeah. So I don't have to suffer the will they, won't they of a normal show. Like we're watching a new episode every week.
Yeah.
See, there's no like winter break. There's no like football this weekend. So we've postponed it and says we don't want to compete with Monday Night Football or something. Yeah. There's none of that. So it's been a good, healthy pace for me.
Okay. And I think that's probably a good transition to Nick. What did you think about today's episode?
It was okay. I gave it 3. Okay. 3 stars. I didn't give it a rewatch. I don't know. There wasn't much in a rewatch. I was like, maybe like it's fine to rewatch because it's an okay episode. I feel like the end of this episode is like 5, but like most of the episode isn't. Yeah. And so, so despite having a very, very strong ending, I'm actually a person I hate like, and this is only an episode, so I don't want to take it too strongly out on this episode, but TV shows in general will have this pattern of dragging you along for so many episodes. And then like trying to have like a big ending and people are like, oh my God, the season finale was so good. I was like, yeah, the season finale was fine, but I shouldn't have had to sit through 6 episodes of nothing to get from like the episode 4 to episode 10. And so it's like this episode, like we chased this guy around. I don't like that I told Raven I literally had to go look to see if this was a cliffhanger episode. So I actually know what the name of the next episode is.
I went to Nick and I was like, oh, okay, have you done like the first watch through? Because I wanted to have like a little chat about it. And then once he did, he was like, I did, but like, so it's not a 2-parter. I was like, no.
So that's very unfulfilling. So I had this thing today where I was outside doing yard work and I was thinking about this episode after watching the second time. I was like, this guy had all the same behaviors that they were flipping their lids over for Paul Melander, where he's cleaning up the evidence. And they don't treat it the same kind of way because that's not the point of his character. But at the same time, it was just like, I was like, are we really just gonna let this guy go? And I mentioned, like, I was like ready for it. Like, oh, they still got the bracelet. There's still half of a bracelet out there that nobody's found. Like, the evidence is not, like, the trail doesn't feel cold to me.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess the thing is, they don't want to continue on the storyline because the whole point was to get to this ending monologue with Griffin and so Grissom. So I just, yeah, it was like, I was like, you listen, the end of that episode was great, but like, I can't rate the whole episode on one scene.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
There's no Nick. Come on.
There's no Nick. That is true. That is true.
Namesake.
Yeah.
He's about to be promoted. You're not even showing up to work.
I know. So fair. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5.
This is clearly a Hallmark episode, by the way.
It is a Hallmark episode. It like, I remember part of my 4 out of 5 is like, I clearly remember the first time that I watched this episode and got to the final scene and watched the final, and I remember being like, oh my goodness, like, oh my goodness. So part of this is like the nostalgic feeling of remembering the first time that I watched this. But I'll also say that, I mean, other than Nick not being there, but I think we're starting to see a pattern where, for whatever reason, like, I mean, they must have a grueling filming schedule because they do 23 episodes a season.
Yeah, I think people need time off, right?
Yeah, and so like, we see pretty regularly, like every few episodes, like one character is not in the episode, and you're like, okay, that makes sense because they have a grueling filming schedule. So yes, Nick's not there, but otherwise everybody's involved. Everyone's like heavily involved. There's obviously characters,
except for Sarah, who basically doesn't. She's like looking for something to do half the episode.
But she's always like,
she does a bunch of stuff.
She does a bunch of stuff, but she's also like continually makes Grissom flustered.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she has a purpose in the episode.
She has a purpose in the episode.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, she's not like as actively working on the case, but she's involved.
Comes back from checking the perimeter. Nope, I found nothing.
Yeah, she's like, there's nothing there. What are you doing in the car? What do you want me to do?
And then she's like, I had nothing to do. She's like, oh, I'm gonna help you out. And then she could have been checking the vacuum cleaner bag at that point.
Nope. That was Warwick. But there's obviously there's character development and story development between Grissom and Sarah, but then there's also like quite a few poignant moments between Grissom and Catherine.
Yep.
So like there's a lot shown of like their relationship, and almost in a sense maybe to show the difference in his relationship with Catherine and his potential relationship with Sarah.
Yeah.
Because like Catherine is like his mom, like his like friend and mom who's like watching out for him. Yeah. And
friend, yeah.
And I don't. This is a good. I don't know if this is a good rewatch immediately afterwards, but this is a great episode to like when you're rewatching the series to like hit this episode and be like, I'm here and I get to watch this episode, and this is such like a crucial episode. I think
compare it to like other sitcoms or shows or things where you've had people finally get together or something, and so it's an important episode. Yes. I think to the long-term vision. But yeah, that's what I said. Like the end of the episode is great, but poor old, never seen any episodes before. I have no.
Yeah. You're like,
here's the thing: never seen the show before. For whatever reason, I know that these two characters get together. You know what I mean? I didn't have to live in the world in which nobody knew what was going to happen week to week, right?
Yeah.
Whether I had seen it in promos or other shots of the show, like I know that I also know at some point, like, well, I guess he has it now, right? Grissom finally has a beard. I remember somehow I knew that Grissom would end up with a weird beard later on in life, but it's like things like that there are, I still watch television, so I still saw, commercials for the show all the time. And so it wasn't like out of left field for me that this is going to happen. But yeah, if I think about like the suspense of, as I said, I've watched them back to back. I don't have to have the pauses. I don't have to have the summer breaks. Right. And we're like, of like wanting them to get to this point. I've just sort of been on the roller coaster. It's just a smooth ride the whole time away. But yeah, it totally makes sense that like this is a key moment to those characters' relationships Now, like, I haven't lived through that relationship yet, so I don't have that. But yeah, their episode is okay. Let's word this. The crime solving part of the episode is okay. Yeah. It would be better if they solved the crime.
You are a big fan of like wanting
finality
to it, and I feel like that doesn't bother me as much.
I think if I wasn't sitting there in my brain being like, wait, there's still evidence I haven't tracked down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know, something else. You know, some kind of comeuppance. Yeah, I don't know. It's very unfulfilling, and they don't always have to catch the person. Like, they don't always have to prosecute the person.
Yeah.
But it felt like they left a stone unturned, and so then I was assuming that there was more of this episode, and I was just disappointed to find there wasn't.
There's not.
Yeah.
Well, we'll find out if that disappointment carries into our next episode when we come back next week to review season 4, episode 13, Suckers. But otherwise, we'll talk to you next week.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.